In this week's EV news, electric cars outsold petrol in the UK last month. Kia will launch 9 new electric models in the UK by 2023. EV drivers are being hit with surge pricing at thousands of public chargers, and a little known fire safety regulation prevents the installation of chargers at a new leisure complex in Preston. Welcome back to another EV news, and we've got a good mix of positive and negative articles this week, which might be the antidote to those of you that were saying it was all a little bit too rosy last time. As always, make sure you click the like button, and if you're new here, subscribe as well to make sure you don't miss out on the next one. First up, would you believe me if I told you that electric cars outsold petrol ones last month? Well, the figures from the SMMT are in, and that is exactly what happened. Pure electric vehicles took a 32.9% share of the UK car market in December, marking the biggest ever monthly market share for EVs and narrowly pipping petrol cars, which made up the second largest share at 32.8%. What I find really interesting about this is if you look at the actual units sold, 42,284 battery electric vehicles were sold in December 2022 versus 27,705 in 2021. So that's either a massive uptick in demand or it's indicative of the taps being turned on in terms of supply. In reality, it's probably a little bit of both, isn't it? Perhaps rather unsurprisingly, the real loser was diesel. 4,006 units were sold this December versus 5,201 last year. That's a 23% decrease and another step towards diesel becoming increasingly irrelevant for passenger cars. Year-to-date figures show that battery electric vehicles now have a 16.6% market share, with a total of 267,203 new registrations in 2022. Diesel, petrol and mild hybrid diesel are all down on the previous year, although I'm surprised to see that plug-in hybrids are also down. 101,414 were sold in 2022, which is an 11.5% decrease on 2021. I wonder if some plug-in hybrid buyers are being converted to full electric, and those even more favourable tax treatment for company car users might be one big incentive for them to do so. Providing a fully electric car suits your needs, I can certainly see why people would take the leap. The best-selling car in December of all fuel types was the Tesla Model Y, with 10,664 units registered. It also takes the number 3 spot of all cars sold in 2022, with 35,551 in total, closely pipped by the venerable Vauxhall Corsa in second place, and the Nissan Qashqai takes the crown with a total of 42,704 sales. The Model Y is unsurprisingly also the best-selling electric car of the year, with the Model 3 in second place at 19,071 units and the Kia e-Niro in third at 11,197. There's a link in the description to the SMMT website if you want to see all the facts and figures in all their glory, but I do think it makes for interesting reading. I wonder though, what do those sales figures actually mean in terms of trending, and what are they going to look like going forward? The impending 2030 ban on one hand, which should reduce petrol and diesel sales and boost EV sales, but increased taxation, removal of incentives and increasing energy costs, on the other hand, potentially balancing that out. I mean, there's currently no sign at the moment of things slowing down though, and those supply issues that have plagued EV delivery times seem to be easing up at least a little bit for some manufacturers, which should make things a little bit easier. Upcoming new car model news next, and Kia have announced that they will launch 9 new pure electric cars into the UK market by 2027. This announcement forms part of their business roadmap leading up to 2030, where they'll launch 14 new electric cars worldwide. It makes us wonder which ones we're not getting, but this push for electrification is a key component in Kia's bid to sell 4 million vehicles annually by the end of the decade, with over a quarter of those predicted to be battery electric vehicles. Several of these new EVs that are planned will be based on the same eGMP platform that underpins the hugely popular EV6. Kia has trademarked badges ranging from EV1 to EV9, and the latter will join the EV6 in the lineup when it is revealed later this year. It builds upon the concept EV9, which made its debut in 2021, and the large SUV will offer 7 seats and a boxy, upright design, much like the concept car had. A small EV4 crossover is also expected to arrive in the near future, based on a shortened version of the eGMP platform. Going head to head with the likes of the BMW iX1, it could offer more than 300 miles of range thanks to that powertrain borrowed from the EV6, so I'm sure that will make it a very strong player in the market. Another one of Kia's goals for 2030 is to become a leading global brand for purpose-built vehicles, where they'll build customised versions of their sort of standard cars for corporate customers, who increasingly are expecting bespoke products tailored to their exact needs. For now, these vehicles will be built upon existing platforms like the eNiro Plus that is aimed at taxi fleets and ride-hailing services, but by 2025 and beyond, they'll be producing a dedicated skateboard platform for these customisable models. I think that might be quite interesting indeed. What's more interesting, I think, is when these custom vehicles will end up on the sort of secondary market once the big fleets are done with them, and they'll be a bit weird and wonderful, a bit like when you buy an ex-police car, I guess, and it's got all sorts of strange specification that you wouldn't normally get. Across its manufacturing facilities, Kia will also be switching to more sustainable production methods, recycled materials, and using renewable energy where possible. All steps that I'm sure you can agree are very welcome when we're talking about producing cars that are at least supposed to have a decreased impact on the environment. I can't wait personally to see some more of these new models coming up from Kia. I know that there are a number of you driving cars like the eNiro and the EV6, and they're absolutely smitten with them, think they're absolutely fantastic, so some more of the same in some different formats sounds like it'd be very welcome indeed. Let me know what you think in the comments. Public charging doom and gloom now, or at least that's the way it was presented in this article in the Telegraph that I'm referencing. The headline is, "Electric vehicle drivers hit with surge pricing at thousands of roadside charging points." But I'm not sure it's actually as negative as the way that we're clearly trying to spin it in this article. But what we're seeing and what's being described here is time of use pricing. Time of use pricing make it through to the public charging networks. As you may or may not know, the wholesale price of electricity varies depending on the time of day and therefore how much demand there is across the grid. You can have this type of pricing at home if you want. Octopus Energy offer a tariff called Agile, where you have half-hour pricing. So every half-hour slot of the day has a different rate depending on the wholesale price and how much demand there is. It's really interesting, and I think at least it's a really clever tariff that shows very well what the future of energy retail could look like. Why pay an average cost for all of the time that takes into account the fact there will be peaks and troughs, when actually you can just own it, right? And you can pay exactly the going rate at the time that you're consuming energy. And it means you can shift demand to cheaper times and take full advantage of that if possible. And obviously sometimes you will need to suck it up and pay, but I think overall you end up coming out ahead. The article reports that Ubitricity and Genie Point are both rolling out dynamic pricing on their networks, where you will pay more to charge during peak times. Or, if we take the negative spin back a little bit, you will pay less to charge during off-peak times. Ubitricity charges 79 pence per kilowatt hour during their peak times, which are 4 PM to 7 PM, but this drops down to 45 pence the rest of the time, down from their previous rate of 49 pence 24 hours a day. Now this is clearly a reaction to the ever-increasing wholesale prices, but I actually quite like the concept, and I like the fact that they're giving you the choice here. You can decide whether or not your need to charge is urgent enough that you'll pay a little bit more to do so during those peak times, but actually, if you can work your schedule so you charge at a different time, you'll pay less. Genie Point are offering a tariff of 57 pence per kilowatt hour from 8 PM to 8 AM and 75 pence the rest of the time. Now, given how rapid charging providers are charging rates in the 70s pretty much all day long anyway, that sounds actually like quite a good deal to me. If you can charge in the off-peak times, you're going to pay less. And I honestly believe that this type of charging will be the future for public EV charging, and if I'm perfectly honest, for home energy supply as well. Flat rate tariffs, I think, will become a thing of the past sooner rather than later, and I think you will be paying based on when you're actually consuming. When asked by The Telegraph about these moves, Ubitricity said, "Between 4 PM to 7 PM, the price that we are paying to supply our charge points with electricity more than doubles due to peak demand on the national grid. Rather than distribute this increased cost to all of our customers through our standard pricing, we have decided to limit this price increase to a peak window. And this ensures that we offer the best value reduced rate to our customers for the majority of the time." I mean, I think that sounds fair enough. And I think there's an unnecessarily negative spin on this. I don't know about you though, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. But overall, I think variable pricing is a good thing, and as long as the tariffs are communicated clearly, I welcome it and I hope that we'll see more of it from other operators in the future. And finally, planning meets fire safety in a strange outcome for a new leisure complex in Preston, where councillors have reluctantly had to agree to remove EV charging points from the plans for Preston's new cinema, restaurant and recreation development in order to comply with fire safety regulations. Now, when I first saw this, I thought that this was just a load of clickbait rubbish in the media. But no, there was originally a planning condition that required 18 of 164 spaces in this development to be reserved for EVs, which they're unable to meet due to fire regulations. The car park is in the basement, and apparently putting chargers in a below ground car park is not compliant with current fire safety regulations. They'll future-proof the car park by running cabling that would enable chargers to be installed later, so if there's any change in the regulation they can implement them, a lot easier. A Town Hall Planning Officer James Mercer said that if newer methods of charging that are safer than those we currently have, it means we won't need to dig up the car park to put them in. And I must admit, this is news to me and it totally caught me by surprise. But remember Part S of the building regulations that governs the requirements for EV charging installations? Well, it has provision that says covered car parks, like the basement one here, should have EV charging provisioned in spaces that are outside and that are not undercover. And if that is not possible, cables should be run for future provision later. And I'm absolutely gobsmacked by this because I had no idea that there are fire regulations in place that prohibited EV charging in covered car parks like this. And this could be seriously limiting, if you think about it, for charging infrastructure rollouts in the future. And you've got to ask the question, is there really more risk from an EV charging than there is of a petrol or diesel car parking up and potentially combusting? We already know which of those two catch fire most often, and it's not the one you might think if you're of a slightly anti-EV bias. I do wonder if we'll see revised fire regulations in the future, or if charging in a basement will remain a no-no forever. I mean, there must be hundreds of buildings out there, leisure developments like this, office blocks, blocks of flats, arguably more importantly, where you definitely want, ideally, to be able to install chargers in the basement to allow people to charge the cars while they're parked up. Let me know what you think in the comments. I think it's hugely limiting, and it'll be really interesting to see if that's ever changed going forward. That's it for this week's EV news. Make sure you've clicked that like button and subscribe to make sure you don't miss out on future videos. Thank you so much for watching as always. I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments about all of these stories, and I'll see you next time.